Hi, this is to introduce you to the Baby Lock Imagine self-threading serger. It's a 4-thread serger. We'll let you know that it comes with its own reference guide and a little 1-page, 2-sided threading guide and stitch guide. And then what you as students will be filling out on your worksheet so that you know the function for each part of the machine. You need to fill in something as the teacher introduces you to each part. One thing that I need to tell you right off is that because this is a self-threading serger, you do not tie off a new thread to your old thread. If you've learned that from a different serger, that is a no-no. So do not do that. The first thing we'll talk about is the Telescopic thread guide, which is this. It's in storage position, but never sew with it in that position. You always pull it all the way up. You'll break your thread or your needle or could damage the machine. So that's what you'll write for the first one. Then we have 2 needles. We have a left needle that forms the left straight stitch. We have a right needle and that forms the right straight stitch. Those are the stitches that will be on the left side of the serger stitch. Above the needles are the needle clamp screws, L for left, R for right. There are times when you will not use one of those needles. If you want a more narrow stitch, take out the left needle. If you want a 3-thread and have it be wider, then take out the right needle. But you want to use your little needle holder. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to do that. And you'll hold it there, and then you will loosen the screw and then pull the needle out. This helps prevent the needle from dropping all the way down. The thing you need to write about the needle clamp screw is always make sure you tighten the screws when you're finished. If your needle happens to fall down, just be very careful. There is a little pull-out tray right here, and sometimes the needle will fall there. Please don't try to sew on this before finding that needle. The next one is the needle threader lever. That lever is right here. You can select L for left or R for right to automatically thread, or you can just manually thread it yourself. As the stitches are formed, they form over what's called stitch fingers. The stitch fingers are really hard to see and may not show up on the video actually, but they're right back here, right here. And you have 2 permanent ones, but you also have one that can be pulled back. And this is where the stitch is formed. If we wanted to do the narrow rolled hem, we would select that, and you watch, the stitch finger is removed. That allows you to get a more narrow stitch. And it happens automatically when you select the narrow rolled hem. The thread cutter is here to the left. Be very gentle. It's plastic, so be careful, but you can chain off enough to cut there. The presser foot thread release lever is just your handle to raise and lower the presser foot. You don't always have to raise the presser foot on a serger. If you'll just put your left thumb in the front, you can just lift up like this. It has a spring, and then that allows you to put your fabric underneath there. The next part is called the presser foot pressure knob. That's a little knob up here. Rarely do we have to touch that, but that changes the amount of pressure that the presser foot has in feeding your fabric through. But I just wanted you to know that's where that is. As you form your stitches, you have stitches on the top and stitches on the bottom, and those are formed by the loopers. The upper looper is this diagonal one, and the thread comes at the end, and then the lower looper is this horizontal looper right here. I'm going to just put my hand on the hand wheel a little bit so you can see how they move. Okay? Those are important terms to know. The upper looper will form the stitch on the top, and the lower looper forms the loop on the bottom. You also have a machine lock button right here, and you have a lock button release lever. So this button locks the air tubes, and this button releases that lock. So I'm going to demonstrate that. Your left thumb, put on there, your right hand is on your hand wheel, and just move it until you hear it lock. Now our release lever is to the left. When we're ready to release it, just push that lever to the right, and that unlocks it. The air tubes recede again. The next one is the looper threader lever. That's this right here. You can hear the air pushing through. That's how you will thread the upper and lower loopers. The looper thread fine-tuning screw is this little screw right here. This is another area that you rarely have to mess with. These self-threading sergers do not have tension discs or dials. But if you have to tweak your tension stitch, you can go to the negative to loosen or plus to tighten. Stitch selector is this button right here. A and B are your regular serger stitches. C and D are your narrow serger stitches, more for hems. Your stitch length and rolled hem is this large button down here. The smallest is 1, goes up to 4, and notice it says standard. If we want to do the rolled hem, which removes our stitch finger, we turn to the rolled hem side, which is the blackened side, and it goes from 0.75 up to 4. That's stitch length. This one is our stitch width adjusting dial. That changes our stitch width by moving the blade. And so if you see two numbers here, the bigger number on top, 6.5, is for when you're using the left needle. This smaller number, 4.0, is when you're using the right needle. The cutting blade is right here, and it goes up and down, so we do not sew with pins beyond this point. And if you ever wanted to lock that blade, you'd come here to the lock button, turn it over to the lock side. Now the blade has gone down and will not cut your fabric. The last feature is the differential feed knob. That's this knob right here, or actually a lever. It's on neutral, and that's where you can keep it. But depending on your fabric and whether you want to gather it or stretch it, we could increase or decrease by going up or down. But for now, just leave it in the neutral position. Okay, those are the basic parts of the machine. Now we want to show you how to thread the machine. Before we do that, we want to cut and remove all of the threads. So we open up the doors. I like to go ahead and cut the threads above the needle. I cut the threads above the threading ports. And make sure your presser foot is up. We never pull hard on the serger. Treat them gently, pull back on the threads, and get your threads off. We're going to do different thread colors so that you can see the stitch. So we will do blue for the left needle, red for the right needle, yellow for the upper looper, and green for the lower looper. If we go into our book, it tells you the order for threading. We start with the lower looper, then upper looper, and then the needles, right needle and left needle. We have to get the machine set up. We have to engage the air tube. So once again, we're going to push on the machine lock button. There are air tubes. We have U for upper, L for lower. So we'll push it to the left. Bring your thread up into the telescopic thread guide. I hold my thread taut between my two hands. So it clicks in back here, comes down into the tension. Give yourself 18 inches of thread and have a nice, clean tail. You can use your fingers or the tweezers and feed 1 inch of thread tail into the threading port. Okay, either do it with your finger or the tweezers. Whoops, doesn't want to go in. You don't want the thread to be caught on anything. Once it's in enough, briskly but carefully push down, and we'll watch what happens over here. It shoots the thread all the way through. It's like magic, and your thread comes out of the lower looper. Now we're finished with that one. We will flip over to the U, the upper looper, and get that thread going. It's the back right corner. Once again, hold the thread taut between your hands. Comes down to the tension area. 18 inches of thread tail. Get 1 inch down into the threading port. These tweezers are not holding the thread very well. Let's try to feed in 1 inch. Don't let the thread get caught on anything, and then briskly push and watch the upper looper. And it shoots through. This is why it's called a self-threading serger, and we do not tie knots through. Okay, the loopers are done, so release the lever. So the air tubes recede again. Now we're ready to do the left needle, right needle, then left needle. Once again, hold the thread taut. We ignored this big hook, but the thread does come right here behind this hook. This is our take-up lever. It comes all the way around, and then we thread front to back. One thing I didn't mention about the needles is that they look like they're different lengths. That's normal. They are the same sewing machine needle, but the left needle gets inserted a little higher, so the right needle looks longer. That's normal. Now we're ready to do the left needle. They share the same hook right here. They share the take-up lever. And then we thread the left needle front to back. These tweezers just don't grab. Once we're finished threading, then we need to get all 4 threads under the presser foot. They're worthless. There we go. Careful not let your threads get tangled. We're going to take all 4 of them. Come on. We want them free from one another and under the presser foot. So I take all 4 and I go under the presser foot, around the blade, and back towards the left of the machine. I need to unlock my blade. Okay, now I can close my doors. And we're going to set up the machine for our first stitch, which is the 4-thread overlock. We use both left and right needle. Our stitch length is standard, between 2.5 and 3.5. Our stitch width is between 6 and 7.5, so we'll leave it there. And our stitch selector is A. So we'll go ahead and close the door, turn the machine on, and now we'll lower the presser foot. Our threads are under the presser foot. We're ready to form a stitch over the stitch fingers before we add the fabric, just to make sure everything's working right. You should see that stitch forming. It should look nice and uniform. Once that looks good, go ahead and put your fabric under. You will use 2 layers of fabric. You don't have to raise the presser foot. You can just lift in the front here. We do want some of the fabric to be cut off, so I like to just put my fabric right here along the edge. You're seeing that it's cutting off some of the fabric. You'll get a nicer stitch if you cut some fabric off. Chain off. You can use your cutter or scissors. And now let's just examine the stitch. That is our left needle. This is our right needle. The lower and upper looper don't penetrate the fabric at all. They just float on top. Notice you can't even see the lower looper. It's forming the lower stitch. To get good tension, you want to look right here. You have the upper and lower looper meeting right here along the edge. That's what you're looking for. And if you haven't gotten that nice stitch, the best thing would be to just check to make sure everything is threaded correctly and the thread is down in the tension grooves, and try again. There's your stitch. A serger will never replace a sewing machine. There are some things that only a sewing machine can do, but it complements a sewing machine and gives a nice finished edge. It cannot backstitch, so I'm going to show you some different ways you can secure your thread tails. One thing you can do is pull on the chain, have all of the thread tails meet, and thread them through a large tapestry needle, like so. Secure the thread tails in that needle. Oh, I don't let it go. And thread them up into your stitch. You want a dull needle that doesn't catch. And pull it through like that to secure it. That's one method. Sometimes I'll just cut it off if I know I'm going to cross that seam with another stitch. But if not, then you can tie a knot. Loop that chain through around your finger. Pull the thread tail through. Now, we want that knot to be close up to our stitching. So if you'll put a needle or a pin through that loop, that will help guide the knot right next to your fabric. You have better control of it. Another thing you can do is add fabric glue. It's called fray check. And you can dab that on the end. You do need to let that dry though, with a hair dryer or just with the air. And cut your thread tail. So those are two different ways that you can secure your tails. Then I'm going to show you what they do in the garment industry of a way to backstitch or secure your chain stitch at the beginning and end. You'll go ahead and start stitching. Just barely come on. And raise the presser foot. And then I pull on that chain stitch so that it's more slender. Bring it in front like this and lower the presser foot, and you're going to stitch over that tail for about an inch. That encases it. Then put the chain in front of the blade, let the blade cut it off. When you get to the end, you will stop stitching right at the end, raise the needles all the way, raise the presser foot. Right now our stitches are locked on the stitch fingers, so to release that we have to pull just a little bit of slack on the needle threads. That way you can pull the fabric straight back off the stitch fingers and flip your fabric around. Now we don't want the blade to cut anything, but we're going to be close to the blade. Now we'll lower the presser foot and stitch for about an inch and chain off. So here's our beginning where we stitched over the chain and then cut it off. And here's the ending where we flipped the fabric over and stitched. That's another way that you can secure your serger ends.